remember Georgina Modley, some of you will remember from, I think, the second UK tour.
That's my sister.
his sister.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry,
That's his
I've jumped. Richard's wife Diana couldn't come
That's right.
tonight.
Yeah.
You will remember in letters and diaries, Richard's father figures prominently, and so does his grandfather, particularly on the picture page. Welcome, Richard. We're sorry to miss Diana. Right. Peter, who is also a member of the Goldsmiths Company, is now going to talk to us about these pictures. And just to set the genealogical side very quickly, before he produces lots of new evidence, historical and then talks technical, in the middle with the ribbons, these are Lady Wingfield, born Anne Cromwell, Anne with an E. And here, this is Sir Edward Wingfield, who inherited Portscourt in 1634. So he suddenly came into some money. And Peter will talk about whether these are 1634 or not. On the outside, without the ribbons, are the replicas showing how he manages to reproduce the pictures, including 1634 frames, which he'll talk about technically. So if you just think back to Thomas of York River, his father was John Wingfield York Herald, and the mother of John was Frances Cromwell. In many documents it's Cromwell with a U, and it was pronounced Cromwell probably in those days. And Frances Cromwell was married to Sir John Wingfield of Tickencote at Tickencote. And Frances Cromwell, Thomas's grandmother, had a sister called Anne, this very, very beautiful lady here, who married Sir Edward Wingfield of Carnew, a place in Ireland, and of Portscourt alias Powerscourt or Powerscourt, whichever you like. And he inherited the great estate with thousands and thousands of acres at Powerscourt in 1634, and he died in 1634. In 1638, he also owned Benburb Castle. I won't say anything else, because when Peter found these pictures, I fed into him some information, which is here on a fax, and he's taken it and run with it and discovered all sorts of exciting things. So I'd like to hand over straight away to Peter to tell us all about it. It's 20 to 7. We're due to start eating at 7, but they're used to me coming out at about 5 to 7 saying add 5 minutes.
Hello everyone, Peter Wingfield Stratford, that's me. I want to say that mostly this chase of people that you are going to hear about started not with me or with my good friend here, Jocelyn, but with Vera Pryor-Alker. I don't know whether any of you have ever heard of this lady, but she wrote to me when I lived in London sometime in the 1950s and said she wanted to find out about her ancestors because she wanted to join the Daughters of America. So I said, oh, well, I've got lots of information, I'll have a look. And I sent her a wad of paper. And then I got back a check for, I think it was $15. So I thought, that's no good. We have pounds and shillings and pence in those days. And you can't do anything with that. So I sent it back and I said, you have it, but send me a copy of anything you find out and I shall be perfectly happy. And Vera sent me a wad of history, which started a paper chase. And you're going to see some of that in what Jocelyn has done and some of the things that I found out lately. But there are records that my family has held for some time, which I seem to have become the guardian of. And other people who are Wingfields find out about me because my name doesn't have any other types of its kind in the telephone directory. So I have lots of letters coming in from time to time asking me for things, so I just collect it. And anyway, what I have found out may or may not be true, but I've done my best. Now,
Lee will have you if it's known.
That's right. On your left is Lady Anne Wingfield, born, we think, about 1590 something, but we don't know exactly, and died 1636. She's described in the portrait legend, if you look there or there, as daughter of Ye Lord Cromwell, Earl of Essex, and he was actually the third Earl of Essex. She was a great granddaughter to Thomas Cromwell, who was the first Earl of Essex. I'm going to come on to him in a moment because he's rather an important figure. The first Earl Thomas was the leading figure at the court of King Henry VIII. Now, Anne married Sir Edward Wingfield, as Jocelyn has said, in Ireland about 1619. He was a descendant of the Letheringham branch of the Wingfield dynasty. We're not kings, but it's a nice word. Sir Edward was a distinguished soldier and a person of great power and influence in Ireland, and in about 1634, when 44 years of age, he inherited the newly created Viscountcy of Powerscourt, when his cousin Sir Richard, the first Viscount, died. And with her daughter and 6 sons, it seems to have been a fruitful, if rather late marriage, at least for Sir Edward. The portrait is believed to have been by Theodore Roussel, who was a painter who achieved some acceptance after 1632. So we know from that point of view, partly because of the painter and partly because of the sitter and the dress, that this is about that period of time. In the portrait, Anne is dressed in the fashion of that period and apparently about 20 to 30 years of age. It may have been a mark of the wealth following her becoming a new Viscountess in 1634. Besides this marriage, Lady Anne found a second link with the Wingfield family, as her sister Frances was married to Sir John Wingfield of Tickencote. Now, on the other side here, we have the gentleman, Sir Edward Wingfield, 1588 to 1638, of Carew in County Wicklow, in Ireland. The subject was a distinguished soldier under the 3rd Earl of Essex. He was a distinguished soldier and a person of great power and influence in Ireland. In 1634, when 44 years of age, I'm repeating myself, he inherited the Viscountcy. He married Anne, daughter of Edward Lord Cromwell and sister of Thomas, the 1st Earl of Ardglass, which is another place in Ireland, I don't know where it is. Having a daughter, Christian, and 6 sons, Richard, Francis, Louis, Anthony, Edward, and Folio. This alliance sealed his connections with military and political power via the Cromwells. Anne was the great-granddaughter of Thomas Cromwell, 1st Earl of Essex, the leading figure at the court of Henry VIII. And again, Sir Edward descended from the Letheringham branch of the Wingfield family. He was a son of Richard, grandson to George, brother to Sir Richard Wingfield of Portsmouth. Sir Richard was grandson to Sir John Wingfield of Letheringham, who had a lovely memory in that he was imprisoned in the Tower of London around 1444. But I don't know what he did that he shouldn't have done. So that's the history of these paintings. But I'm going to suggest something which is very interesting to you to do if you've got a moment in London, because the Cromwells turn up again and again in this history of the Wingfields. And you ought to know something about the Cromwells. Now, it turned out that there are some very fine paintings indeed of Sir Thomas Cromwell, the 1st Earl of Essex, which is not very far away from here, about 3/4 of a mile, in the National Portrait Gallery. And it's the one of the finest paintings of Holbein that we have, and it's a miniature. And it is 2 paintings, one on the back of the other, and it's only about that big, tiny, but it's most beautiful and well worth going to see. Now I'm going to read to you this little piece about Holbein, because it comes into the Cromwells and the Cromwells cross with the Wingfields in various generations. Thomas Cromwell, Earl of Essex, 1485 to 1540, epitomised the man of modest origins and outstanding ability, which I'm sure all of you Americans will appreciate, who rose to great power under the Tudors. Born in 1485, the son of a Putney blacksmith, he entered Parliament in 1523. Think 1523, and he died in 1540. His family originated as minor landowners in Huntingdon and later moved to Ely. Cromwell's sister Catherine married a Morgan Williams, and later their son restored the Cromwell name, leading eventually to the birth of Oliver Cromwell, his great-grandson, and who became the Lord Protector of England. In 1653, that was the date. and he was the Puritan revolutionary parliamentarian who overthrew the monarchy. Thus, one branch of the Cromwells eventually extinguished the excessive powers of royalists in the kingdom, which was once fostered by other Cromwells, namely the first Earl of Essex. The first significant step towards his rapid rise to power came with his appointment as Cardinal Wolsey's secretary. After Wolsey's fall in 1529, Cromwell was able to further mobilise his ruthless ambition, characteristic of all of us Wingfields, I hope. He aided Henry VIII in his conquests as head of both church and state, and so became the most powerful figure at the court. He became Chancellor of the Exchequer in 1533, Visitor General to the monasteries in 1536, when he was a key figure in the Reformation, becoming the architect of the dissolution and robbing of the monasteries. He was King Henry VIII's hatchet man, and he robbed all the monasteries and suppressed everything and put it all in the treasury for the king. The same year he was created Baron Cromwell, Knight of the Order of the Garter, and then 1540 became Earl of Essex. Cromwell was a cultivated and a shrewd man. He met the talented Swiss artist Holbein at the court. He foresaw the role an artist of Holbein's stature could play in the propaganda campaign he was waging in favour of the Reformation. Consequently, the links between Holbein and Cromwell were strong, and the artist appears in Cromwell's accounts for 1538. The following year, Holbein was sent to Durin in Holland to paint the king's intended bride, Anne of Cleves. This was one of Henry VIII's wives, who was rather sadly to come to an end. The king found Anne, in contrast to her flattering portrait by Holbein, more like a Flanders mare. Cromwell fell from favour after Henry's short-lived marriage, and he never slept with her once, apparently. The political alliance with Protestant Germany, which had inspired the marriage, ended along with it, and the collapse of relations paled Cromwell's earlier successes into insignificance. When the Duke of Norfolk accused Cromwell, by then Earl of Essex, of treason, Henry did not intervene, and on 28th of July he was executed. So that's what happens to a fast riser. It's an interesting aside that the Holbein locket was long held in the possession of the Ashton Blount family, and might have been a gift at Cromwell's execution. An earlier Blount, Lord Montjoy, was Master of the Royal Mint, and would have known Cromwell well. The Royal Mint was where you kept the money and made the money, so you needed the gold, and you had to have dealings with the person who got all the gold from the monasteries. Blount attended the king at the historic contract with the French on the field of Cloth of Gold, which you may have heard about in France, where other leading members of the Wingfield dynasty, including Sir Anthony, and do you know of any others? Seven other Wingfields were in the field of the Cloth of Gold. And if you want to see the field of Cloth of Gold, pay a visit to Hampton Court Palace, where there's a wonderful large painting to see with them all there. Hans Holbein's superb portrait of Thomas Cromwell, Earl of Essex, 1485-1540, are now part of the National Collection and kept at the National Portrait Gallery. They're, in the opinion of Susan Adams at Christie's, amongst the most powerful images of the Tudor era. The two miniatures are mounted in a single frame as a locket and are the finest of about 5 replicas currently known. The ambitious Cromwell would undoubtedly have needed versions of such portable images because he didn't have a digital camera. And so they portrayed him at various stages of his remarkable career, and which were beginning to be distributed and received as gifts. Can I go on just a little bit more? The earlier of these 2 miniature portraits of Thomas Cromwell was painted in 1532 and shows him in black robes. This is this little miniature. And in the second he wears the chain and George of the Order of the Garter, which he was awarded in 1536. As head of the Royal Treasury, he was master of the Jewel House, where he sat for the earlier of the portraits. Both miniatures, as well as a well-known portrait in oil in the Frick collection in New York, were taken from a preparatory drawing which has not survived. But you might find it somewhere. 3 other versions of this Cromwell Holbein portrait are known. One originating in the Addington collection, probably from Addington House or Stratford Place, was originally in the ownership of my family, the Wingfield Stratford branch of the Wingfield family, until its disposal in 1883. That miniature was recently resold at Bonham's and is clearly a copy and may, apart from the features, be largely the work of Holbein's studio. So that's not such an important one. The real one is the one in the National Portrait Gallery. This Addington Holbein miniature may well have been passed down the Wingfield line, eventually reaching Addington via the Wingfield Stratford branch as a suitable complement to the 2 portraits of Sir Edward Wingfield and Lady Anne Wingfield here, described as daughter of Lord Cromwell, who was the 3rd, who was a great-granddaughter of the original Cromwell, the 1st of Essex, and was painted by Theodore Roussel. Another version of the Garter portrait is illustrated in the Burlington magazine, which would appear to be a copy of the Garter one. Hans Holbein the Younger was the greatest of all Swiss artists, paid 2 visits to England, where his genius as a portrait painter was immediately recognized by King Henry VIII, who on his 2nd visit encouraged him to develop the art of miniature painting, and he more or less promoted it from then on. It became fashionable. In England, he painted the portraits of the greatest figures of the age, including the king himself. Cromwell and Holbein enjoyed a mutually beneficial relationship. Holbein came to England for the 2nd time in 1532, the year in which Cromwell was made Master of the Jewel House, and the year before he became Chancellor of the Exchequer. During this period of rapid promotion for Cromwell, he was able to patronize Holbein and secure him commissions at court. Cromwell's discerning artistic eye would have alighted on Holbein's extraordinary skills. That's the story behind all the art, and the art actually ties the history together and makes it come alive. So that's just about all I know, and I defer to a higher authority.
Not a higher authority at all, absolutely fascinating. These 2 on the outside here are reproductions that Peter has done with the latest technology, and I hope he'll talk to Ginger about it, because I don't understand this sort of thing at all, and Charlene a bit too will also understand. These he has kindly made available, reproductions on order, to the Wingfield Family Society, and these cost £400 each, these reproductions. These 2 are available for somebody to walk out of here. Tomorrow morning we start in the bus at 10 o'clock, the UPS opens at 9 o'clock. Somebody buys those 2 pictures, you've got the packaging.
Yes, we've got everything they can
You
have.
can call UPS, have them round here by 9:15, or whatever time they want to call, 9:30. Pick it up and mail it home to your home address, or a cousin down the road or something like that, if you want them. I am certainly going to order a couple myself of these 2, because Sir Edward is my Anne Richards' direct ancestor here. We are descended from the 4th Viscount Portscourt's first marriage. He's from the 2nd, and he's from the 2nd, and I'm from the 1st. So this is a direct ancestor of mine, and this is the great aunt or the grand aunt of Thomas Wingfield of York River. The 2nd closest picture, as I said, you can get to Thomas, those of you descended from Thomas, because Jane Heckington is at Burley. Before we start talking technical, if we want to do that, we're due to eat in about 2 minutes. So anyone who wants to talk technical can do it during dinner or after dinner with Peter about reproductions and UPS. Anyone who'd like to come and make an offer for the picture, the first person to come up and talk to Peter can bring their checkbook or whatever and deal with it during dinner. I'd just like him to say, before we give them the go-ahead to bring the food in, he's discovered one more fascinating thing just round the corner about Sir Anthony Wingfield, died in 1552, Knight of the Garter of Leatheringham. Apparently had a house just down the road here, which I know nothing about.
Well, I'm going to read out. My father used to be involved with promoting for the Brewers Society, which is the people who make beer in this country. And so he had a lovely job which involved going and visiting lots of pubs, which I hope you will do. And on the walls of pubs, people tend to stick little bits of history which you can read. And this is one that I found in his papers when he died. He says, in Brook Street, which is not very far from here, was a mansion belonging to Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk, on the spot where now stands the, it looks like the Coach and Horse Inn. Some remains of an older building may be traced in the walls framing the back part of the present house. The Tankard public house, so this is going to be a pub crawl, next door to the Coach and Horses, formed part of the residence of Sir Anthony Wingfield, Knight of the Garter, Vice Chamberlain, Privy Councillor of the Executors of Henry VIII. So when you come back to this hotel, there's two very nice places to go and visit.
Can I come back on that before you go any further? In Brook Street is about 3 streets away there, and I know it well because my regimental tailor used to be there. And Charles Brandon, I'm sure, had a house there. Charles Brandon also had a house in Southwark, which is a different kettle of fish, which John Wingfield of Letheringham earlier on was involved with. But the only snag to this story is the key word next door to Charles Brandon's house, because the Tankard public house, it was Tackett. The Tackett public house, maybe there's a change here, in Ipswich, which we shall probably drive past, used to be Sir Anthony Wingfield's house, and or Sir Humphrey Wingfield's house, near Belstead, and maybe it's misprint for that, but Tackett, Tankard, no,
Possibly.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, it's worth a drink.
We'll check it out. Right, can I, on behalf of the President, who's the video master for the evening, thank our speaker very much indeed, my close cousin Peter, for his little talk. Any questions you like, please leave till the end of dinner. Could I ask you to tell them okay to go ahead as you're standing up? Okay to go ahead with the food. Thank you so much. Barely standing up. I've only had 2. One of you is descended from name's gone. On the Cromwell tree, Lee, halfway down. Dorothy Wingfield of Upton's Claypole. One of you last night came up about Claypole. I'm sure, Sue, you'll want to talk at length about this. We do have a large Cromwell family tree in the society. Lee has got a copy of it in 3 bits, which you can Xerox if you ask him. And the original was sold at Washington, or the original that I took. I think there may be another one coming up in the auction that we're going to do tomorrow night in Stamford. I'll have to look at my notes. And that has, Sir Edward is on it, Frances, her sister, is on it, there's another Wingfield on it, and Thomas Wingfield's grandfather is on it, as is Adam Claypole, who is son of Dorothy Wingfield of Upton. Right.
Yes.
That's it.
Justin, what about that lad over the
Highway robbery.
Where's our photographer?
We're going to have this young
Now, what kind of special group is this?
1, 2, 3, 4 or something.
Powers Court and Thomas and York.